The fateful cabinet meeting on the direction of the war in Gaza is underway at this hour in Jerusalem. Prime Minister Netanyahu convened his full security cabinet at 6 p.m. to approve Gaza war plans that are widely expected to include a plan for the full IDF takeover of the enclave. Here's more with ILTV's Steve Leibowitz.
Based on reporting in the Israeli media, the Prime Minister is leaning toward approval of the full IDF occupation of the Gaza Strip and the plan to accomplish the goal. It will reportedly be a phased plan to conquer vast new areas of Gaza over 5 months, with the new displacement of around 1 million Palestinians. The plan is reportedly aimed at destroying what remains of Hamas. It would begin with taking over Gaza City and camps in the central strip, driving about half of the enclave's population toward the Mawasi humanitarian zone. Netanyahu is reportedly set on moving forward with the option of full occupation and demanded that the IDF chief Eyal Zamir present plans to accomplish the mission. Zamir is reportedly suggesting a more gradual approach with the encircling of Gaza City. It's expected to be a tense session lasting hours, with military officials, including Zamir, expected to warn the cabinet that occupying Gaza will lead to heavy Israeli casualties. Israeli officials reportedly told the cabinet this week that dozens of soldiers could be killed and wounded in the operation. The army is reportedly warning that conquering all of Gaza would pose a danger to the remaining hostages, because until now the army has refrained from knowingly operating in areas where they are believed to be held. They are also concerned that the hostages could be executed by their captors if the IDF approaches. Ahead of the meeting with the cabinet, Prime Minister Netanyahu met with opposition leader Yair Lapid to brief him on the Gaza war plans. The former Prime Minister had this advice.
אנחנו נשלם עליה מחירים כבדים מדי, גם בחיי אדם, גם במיליארדים מכספו של משלם המיסים הישראלי. במקום כיבוש מיותר וסיפוח מיותר של עזה, אנחנו צריכים להכניס את מצרים לעזה, שיש שם שלטון אחר שינהל את עזה במקומנו, ואז להתפנות לדבר החשוב שזה חיסול החמאס. זה ייקח זמן. כיבוש עזה זה רעיון רע מבצעי, זה רעיון רע ערכית, זה רעיון רע כלכלית.
The Prime Minister has heard from the opposition and from the generals. He's now in consultations with the cabinet. Ultimately, the fateful decision on the direction of the war in Gaza is being made at this hour by Netanyahu. The cabinet and the army are expected to follow.
So if Israel decides to fully take over the Gaza Strip, what will happen to the enclave, and will Hamas stay in this war? Joining us now to discuss what this could mean is Ahmed Fouad, AlKhatib, a senior fellow at the Atlantic Council and the head of Realign for Palestine. Ahmed, thanks so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
So Prime Minister Netanyahu is expected to meet with his security cabinet tonight to approve plans for expanding the war. As someone who is from Gaza and openly is critical of Hamas, do you believe a move like this could ultimately play into Hamas's hands?
I'm afraid the fact that this is coming 2 years late is going to contribute to a possible disaster for both the people of Israel and the people of Gaza. On the one hand, the Israeli soldiers are going to have a hard time dealing with the local population. They're going to have to provide for their humanitarian medical needs. They're going to have to manage a hungry, battered, tired population. Hamas is seeking to draw Israel into the quagmire of Gaza. This would be an entirely different conversation if this happened right after October 7. But the political capital that Israel had following the atrocity that took place in 2023 has largely been exhausted. And I would argue now the entire world is going to scrutinize every action that Israel does and takes in Gaza. Furthermore, you have the risk that this is going to be seen as a permanent step, possibly in alignment with some of the far-right ministers who are promoting the resettlement of Gaza. And so this is, I think, politically, strategically, militarily, is going to be a disaster unless there's a clear and a well-defined outcome that is time-bound and defined by specific milestones.
Right. You mentioned before that this could harm civilians in Gaza, but also people who are Israeli. Military officials are warning that a full takeover of Gaza could lead to more Israeli casualties in the IDF and deepen the humanitarian crisis on the ground in Gaza. If Hamas refuses to step down, how can this war realistically come to an end?
Well, I think, unfortunately, the way that this war has been conducted thus far, and I've been in contact with quite a diverse array of former U.S. and international security and military officials who have been puzzled by the lack of the application of counterinsurgency doctrines in Gaza, which states you clear, you hold, and then you build. And unfortunately, what we've seen consistently is clear, temporary holding, and then leave or depart. And so there needs to be an effort to tactically address Hamas, but simultaneous with that, there needs to be an introduction of a viable Palestinian alternative to the group. I think elements of the Palestinian Authority, training them in Egypt, training them in Jordan, elements of the local people, training a local militia only under the supervision of the Palestinian Authority, not what's happening with Abu Shabab right now under the Israeli purview, and then perhaps involving the Arabs, involving the region. And this is messy. This is going to take time. But that should have been happening on day 2 of the operation. And I'm afraid the Israeli government is 2 years late. Nevertheless, I believe that the alternative of a direct military occupation is a lose-lose scenario, because you're either, I mean, Israel will take over in no time. That's not the issue. It'll take a couple of days and Israel will be in full control. The issue is you're going to have an insurgency. You're going to be drawn into perpetual control. And then you either leave and Hamas simply responds, and by then maybe the hostages would have been harmed,
right,
or you're forced to stay there for a prolonged period of time, and that's a politically untenable situation.
Right. So we're at this point, though, because negotiations are at a deadlock. Journalists from our partner network, Ynet, wrote last week in an article, Israeli officials believe Hamas is not genuinely interested in an agreement and is relying on international pressure while issuing what Israel describes as excessive demands. Do you see this as true? And if so, how?
Well, to a certain extent, yes. I mean, Hamas is trying to, Hamas has lost the war effectively and is negotiating as if it's somehow a victor or a party of equal standing. And unfortunately, the only bargaining chip that Hamas has is the suffering of the 2 million people, and most importantly, the hostages, the remaining Israel, those who are living, and those the bodies of the remaining hostages. And so that is true. However, it is also true that I think the Israeli government has introduced, I think, unnecessary clauses about direct military occupation or direct presence in Gaza. Some of the things that Hamas objected to, I believe, could have been addressed by bringing in the elements of the Palestinian Authority, a regional force made up of the Arabs, of the United States, of the international community. There could have been a way to outmaneuver Hamas in a way to fulfill some of their demands while actually introducing an alternative executive force, guys with guns other than the terror organization. And so I think there's sadly been a short-sightedness in how the negotiations have been conducted. And so there is a kernel of truth, nevertheless, to the fact that Hamas is no longer interested in a deal that does not return it to some level of control as it was on October 6th, before October 7th. What I can share with you, speaking to hundreds of people in Gaza on a regular and weekly basis, is that there is the population itself is so extraordinarily angry and resentful and furious with the terror group at different levels. The people of Gaza see Hamas's behavior. They see through the tactics. They see the exploitation, the theft of the resources, the theft of the aid. And by the way, they're not, and I'm speaking about this from a Palestinian self-interested point of view. Like, these people of Gaza, they're not exactly pro-Israel or Zionist all of a sudden. They're simply saying, why are you prolonging our suffering unnecessarily? Why are you handing us on a silver platter to a far-right government? Why are you risking northern Gaza being settled?
Ahmed, thank you so much for joining us. I've been following your work for a very long time, and I appreciate your voice in all of this. Thank you.
Thank you.
Israel Bonds, the heartbeat of solidarity, the powerhouse of support. When the Israeli-Hamas war hit, Israel Bonds stood tall, proving we're more than just an investment, we're a lifeline. Israel Bonds pledges to ensure Israel thrives and flourishes. Investing in Israel Bonds isn't just a financial move, it's a declaration for resilience, strength, and a better future for Israel. Join us and let solidarity echo through generations.
And ILtv is on the ground in Gaza, where our very own executive editor, Mayan Hoffman, says thousands of tons of humanitarian aid sitting in idle at the Kerem Shalom crossing, just waiting to be picked up. Now, Maayan takes a look at what's really happening at this pickup site and asks why Israel is being blamed for a crisis others are failing to solve. Let's take a look.
So thank you. I came in here today because I wanted to see with my own eyes what is happening on the grounds. I am in Gaza, on this Gaza side of the Kerem Shalom crossing. And what we have here is are thousands and thousands of tons of humanitarian aid that is earmarked, that is slated for the people of Gaza. But it is sitting here in the boiling sun. Israel has enabled all of this aid to enter the Gaza Strip in order to help the people of Gaza. But once it enters this crossing or any of the others, the responsibility for the aid turns over to the international community, namely the United Nations. But still, you can see, and I'll take you around in just a moment and explain the situation. The aid is sitting here in the bolstering, burning hot sun, getting ruined instead of getting to the people of Gaza.
I'm seeing an endless array of foodstuffs, personal items, milk for babies, mattresses for families, winter clothing, just sitting here and rotting under the Gaza sun, because of the so-called humanitarian agencies like the UN and other affiliated agencies simply refuse to distribute it to the people of Gaza. What is true is that the UN is in cahoots with Hamas. It refuses to distribute food. 9 out of 10 of every UN truck is looted by armed Gazans from Hamas and other terrorist organizations. We know that the drivers of UN trucks are members of the Hamas Union, so that Hamas knows where the trucks are going to be, what's on the trucks, where to loot them.
According to the most recently released COGAT data, on August 5th alone, more than 300 trucks entered Gaza. 300 trucks of aid were collected and distributed. More than 800 packages were delivered from 8 countries. 3 fuel tankers entered for humanitarian needs, and 110 aid pallets were airdropped. President Isaac Herzog, during a visit to Estonia yesterday, called on the international community to stop believing what he described as Hamas's falsehoods.
In the last 2 weeks, Israel has overhauled the entire approach to the humanitarian situation. 30,000 tons in the last week. 30 tons only by airdrops yesterday, let alone trucks. Almost 800 trucks the UN can distribute and is failing to distribute. But instead of that, we see a PR campaign like this one. This is from yesterday by German media. You see a photographer staging Gaza people to show that they are lacking food, whilst there's food there behind them. We ask the world not to fall into the lies, condemn Hamas, and say to Hamas, you want to move on? Get the hostages out.
Israel says it has done its part, opening crossings, approving merchants, and enabling aid. But on the Gaza side of the Kerem Shalom, the humanitarian crisis continues, not from a lack of aid, but a failure to deliver it.
We just heard about the Israeli efforts at the Kerem Shalom crossing, and now aid is continuing to enter the Gaza Strip, but this time through Egypt. Nearly 1,000 aid trucks entered the enclave through the Rafah crossing from Egypt on Wednesday, with Egyptian officials saying the move took place outside of any agreement between Hamas and Israel. Israel says they're also boosting the amount of aid coming into Gaza with more trucks, and the IDF says more in the last 24 hours, 900 aid packages were airdropped into Gaza since July 26, with the help from at least 6 different countries.
1000 شاحنة بتحمل ما يقرب من 14,500 طن اللي دخل بالفعل 800 شاحنة. احنا النهارده في انتظار الشاحنات اللي هتكون دخلت ونشوف العدد وصل لفين. بتحمل ما يقرب من 8000 طن أغلبها.
And as news comes out that Netanyahu and the government are leaning towards a full takeover of Gaza, despite it potentially risking the lives of hostages. Their families are coming out to the streets demanding for a single deal that brings them all home. Here's what else you need to know. The families of hostages outside the military headquarters in Tel Aviv. As there scuffles between police and protesters, it's been 671 days since their loved ones were brutally kidnapped by Hamas terrorists on October 7th, with 50 hostages still locked away in the depths of Gaza and nearly 20 of them believed to be alive. The urgency of the protest and the families' pleas come on the heels of the gruesome and painstaking images Hamas and Palestinian Islamic Jihad released of two hostages, Rom Braslavsky and Evyatar David, in emaciated condition and mentally and physically abused. David's family says he just has days to live, as Hamas even forced him to dig his own grave inside of a narrow tunnel in Gaza. The families are also pleading for the government to make a comprehensive deal to get all the hostages home, as Netanyahu and his security cabinet are reportedly leaning towards a full military takeover of the Gaza Strip. The cousin of Carmel Gat, who was executed in captivity almost 1 year ago, says she carries the pain every day.
We need your help to make this decision be made right now. We need your help that this time all 50 hostages will be released, because a month later, just a year ago, my family member was executed by Hamas terrorists. She did nothing wrong. She had dreams to fulfill. She had a family who's mourning. Evyatar's family, Rom's family, can still get Evyatar and Rom back. Evyatar can still play the guitar just like every other 24-year-old guy. His mother, who's getting crazy knowing that her son is being starved at the moment, that he's in the risk of his life for almost 2 years, can hug her son. She deserves it. Every mother deserves it. This suffering must end, and we need your help.
And before we go, a quick word about how you can support independent journalism. Here at ILtv, we are committed to bring you original reporting and stories from Israel that often don't make it into the global spotlight. If you value diverse perspectives and reliable coverage, you can now subscribe through our app to help ILtv News grow. Just scan the QR code on your screen right now to help us expand our reporting, continue delivering the kind of journalism that informs, challenges, and connects. Your subscription helps us do more than report the news. It helps ensure that stories from the region are told with depth, integrity, and clarity. With your support, we can continue to build a space for journalism that informs, connects, and inspires. And amid growing ultra-Orthodox street protests against mandatory IDF service, the new ultra-Orthodox IDF Brigade has completed its first stage of combat training. ILTV's Steve Leibowitz has more.
The new ultra-Orthodox Hashmonean Brigade has now completed its 7 months of combat training. The 50 Haredi troops entered Western Wall Plaza in Jerusalem's Old City at the end of a beret march into the Israeli capital. Soldiers entering the plaza blew shofars and prayed together with their families and officers. The march started in the hills of Jerusalem and follows 7 months of intensive training. The Hashmonean Brigade is the IDF's first fully Haredi unit created since the start of the Gaza war, and is structured in a way that will allow troops to serve without compromising their way of life. The long-term goal is to have 4,000 ultra-Orthodox soldiers in the unit. The ongoing dispute over the issue of deferments for yeshiva students is still playing out in the political sphere, with the new head of the Knesset Foreign Affairs and Defense Committee, Boaz Bismuth, trying to pass a new draft law that would somehow meet the recruitment needs of the IDF and satisfy at least some ultra-Orthodox elements, while leaving the shaky Netanyahu coalition in power. Indeed, angry ultra-Orthodox protests are playing out in the streets of Jerusalem and Bnei Brak. Top Haredi Rabbi Dov Landau is now warning of what he called a global struggle after a few yeshiva students were arrested for draft evasion. The rabbi accused the government of waging a war on the Torah world and promised a global campaign against it. The protesters claim that Torah learning is full-time and cannot be mixed with army service. The Hashmonean Brigade disproves the myth. It was named after the dynasty that began after the Jews threw off the yoke of Hellenistic rule during the Maccabean revolt. Their IDF service is part of their Torah life.
I've always had a dream of speaking Hebrew, but every time I tried, I just froze. The words were there, but They wouldn't come out. My throat would close up. Then I found Rosen School of Hebrew. And honestly, it changed everything. My teacher didn't care about my mistakes. He celebrated when I tried. Now look at me, I'm having full conversations in Hebrew. I'm even reading Hebrew bedtime stories to my kids. If you're scared like I was, trust me, Rosen will help you find your voice. Are you ready for your confidence breakthrough?
And Ben Gurion Airport today had its busiest day of the summer travel, with some 78,000 passengers passing through on about 470 flights. And this month, we'll have more Israeli vacationers traveling abroad than in any month since the start of the war in October of 2023, with an estimated 2.1 million passengers. Now, the most popular destinations this summer are Greece, Cyprus, the UAE, the United States, and Italy. Foreign airlines are resuming flights this week, include Air Seychelles and Hungarian low-cost Wizz Air, with flights to Budapest and Cyprus. And to manage the summer boom, the airport's authority reopened Terminal 1 for both international and domestic flights. In addition, Terminal 3 opened 26 new ground floor counters. It's family vacation time, and war-weary Israelis are quickly resuming travel. Israel is heading into a week-long heat wave with record-breaking temperatures that the Holy Land has never seen in more than a decade. ILTV's Devo Klein has the story.
Israel's already warm weather is about to become drastically more extreme. Over the weekend, experts are predicting that temperatures will soar and reach all new highs depending on location. Israel's beachy cities will be relatively warm, and temperatures are predicted to reach highs of 40 degrees Celsius, which is about 104 degrees Fahrenheit on Israel's coastline. But it's actually central Israel, far from the border, that is predicted to be hit the hardest. According to a report by Ynet News, temperatures in the Jordan Valley could go as high as a scorching 50 degrees Celsius, which is 122 degrees Fahrenheit. Jerusalem will also be a target of the heat wave. Temperatures are predicted to be around 8 to 10 Celsius higher than the average for the beginning of August. So what about Israel's coastline and beaches? Well, reports say that Tel Aviv will see around 32 Celsius or 89 degrees Fahrenheit. However, paired with 75% humidity, forecasters are predicting that it will feel more like 40 Celsius. Israelis have been advised to take serious precautions. Israeli emergency services issued a statement urging the public to drink plenty of water, at least 3 liters a day, and to avoid spending prolonged periods in the sun during the hottest parts of the day. Get your caps on and your sunscreen out, because Israel is heating up.
And let's take a look at the weather forecast. Clear skies are expected around most of the country tonight, with temperatures reaching lows of 25 degrees Celsius or 77 degrees Fahrenheit. Then tomorrow we'll see clear skies alongside excessive heat, seeing highs of 36 degrees Celsius or 96 degrees Fahrenheit. And that's a wrap for today's news. For the latest updates from Israel on all of your devices, be sure to follow our ILtv channels and our new live channel. You can also catch us on Screen IL with 24/7 live coverage. Stay informed with the latest news straight from the heart of Israel. I'm Shosh Bedrosian. Thanks so much for watching.